Hello everyone, this is Lala, and today I'm back with yet another version of the Big Brother Archetypes video, and this time I am covering the punk slash alternative goth slash rocker archetype, and this is easily going to be the shortest one of them all, just from my brief list, and that's because there really aren't many of them. I think there's less than 10 people within the hundreds of people who have been on the show over the last decade and a half who fit this category. So there really isn't a lot to say, but it's pretty self explanatory. These are people who like darker, more alternative exteriors, and they have a different personality due to it and how they just carry themselves. We don't get them often, but when we do get them, they definitely stand out. So let's just get to it. So, the very first person from this archetype is Nokomis from Big Brother 5 and Big Brother 7. And obviously, she is an OG in many different ways. We all know that she was initially cast because of her ties to her brother, which she didn't even know about, and they wanted her to fit the Project DNA twist. And that caused for a whole set of issues on its own. But clearly, just from looking at her, it's clear that she had a punkish appearance and demeanor about herself, where she really wasn't the most social. She had interests that were very different from everyone else. She wasn't seen as conventionally attractive, and she was kind of just in doing her own thing. This made her stand out immediately amongst the Big Brother five house guests, and I think it made her an easy pawn for those first few weeks. But once people started getting to know her, and started seeing that she's not as weird as they thought, though she definitely still had her quirks. She was comfortable. She felt like she could open up more, and everyone felt comfortable with her. And after she got over that social hurdle, she really started making her connections, and then she started getting more and more involved in the game, where she became very respected. And what I like about Nokomis is that during her 2 seasons, we see her change up her hair several different times. Sometimes she'd have purple hair, then she'd have blonde hair, then she'd have orange hair, then she'll have green hair, then she'll shave it off to a mohawk. And it really added an element to this punk archetype that we don't even see much on modern seasons because they discourage them from dyeing their hair and changing their hair. Unfortunately, during her second season in Big Brother All Stars, otherwise known as Big Brother 7, that same social hurdle appeared there with the addition of pre gaming, which usually involves relationships formed outside of the house, where Nokomis isn't one to talk to people she doesn't gel with and she's not the most social. So she wasn't making those pre game connections, and I also didn't have that Big Brother 5 was on the complete out on that season. So she still had that social barrier that she had in the beginning of Big Brother 5. But with all of that, and her not being given the time to really do anything, in addition to also having the rep of being a hardcore gamer, she was booted very quickly from that season. But she was definitely a very interesting look in this archetype that isn't covered much at all. And she's definitely a pioneer in more than one way. And we definitely do respect her contributions to Big Brother. Even though it came from an exploitative place, as we all know from Project DNA. A second person on this list is Evil Dick. And interestingly enough, he was in the casting pool going all the way back to Big Brother 5, but something always happened where he just missed the cut for that season, then Big Brother 6, and obviously Big Brother 7 was All Stars. So the season after that, he was put on Big Brother 8. And he wasn't on Big Brother 6 because his daughter, i.e., Danielle, was too young to be on Big Brother. Obviously, he stands out because he has the flaming gelled up hair with the red highlights. He has a bunch of piercings, scruffy appearance, very punk rockish, a lot of jewelry and rings and all that stuff. He's a chain smoker. And he's very into rock music. He was very open about being confrontational, saying whatever he wanted, not really caring about the repercussions of anything, and just being very, very vulgar in more ways than another. On the show, they kind of justified it as him doing all this so he could protect his daughter and so he can make sure himself and his daughter made it to the end. But realistically, I just think that's his personality to start all the confrontations that he did, state all the horrible statements that he stated that definitely lent into some of the isms, and just his horrible treatment of people in general. Obviously, having to deal with the fact that he was somewhat of a deadbeat to his daughter, and them having to play together only added further stress and strife, but the way he treated Jen and a lot of the other house guests, the way he threw tantrums whenever he didn't get his way, and how production really, really gassed him up in the edit, where they gave him his own theme music. They kind of made it in a way where they made it look like he was justified, and obviously the America's player twist ended up helping him out because he was seen as the favorites to the casuals because of the edit that was given, and due to having the complex relationship with his daughter, especially where the other two people who fit the rivals twist fell apart immediately. I also do think that he came at a point in reality TV where they're really pushing the boundaries of making it as extreme as possible because they wanted that shock factor. And there's kind of a movement in the mid to late 2000s where things were getting VH1 celebrity esque, like that flavor of love, rock of love, charm school era, where they're really upping the ante. You even saw this in a lot of the MTV shows that are happening around the time. Heck, even some of the Survivor show, some of the CBS shows around this time, like those mid to late art 2000s Survivor seasons, and from Big Brother 8 to honestly kind of Big Brother 11, you saw that vibe carry through, and I think Evil Dick definitely benefited from that. Obviously, he had the same personality entering Big Brother 13, but obviously, due to his health, he was pulled from the game. And a part of me thinks it's unfortunate because we don't know how he would have played in a climate that wasn't so 2007, even though 2011 was 4 years later, but even the cultural zeitgeist and how things took place were different then. But he's definitely someone who is of his time and arguably one of the most unique people to ever play the game, though it's not in a good way. So we are moving on to the very next season with James from Big Brother 9. Obviously, just from looking at him, you can tell that he was supposed to fit the archetype with the mohawk, the dyed pink hair, all of the tattoos that they had to cover up, and just his appearance gave very eccentric, very different, and very punk rock-ish. Though he also wore a decent amount of pink. I think the thing with James that makes him different from like an evil dick is that while they're both very confrontational, James had this martyr complex where he always had to act like he was the most moral, the most good person, and he determined what was right, what was wrong, what was good, what was not, what was fair, and what wasn't. Whenever he did something, it was good, but if someone else did the exact same thing, they were horrible, they were mean, they were villainous, blah, 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 blah. He also got a glimmering edit because he was in the underdog position during the second half of his game, though it was really due to his own actions why he was in that position. And I also think his showmanship with Chelsea kind of overshadowed this element of him, especially with him also getting this good edits due to his position. And that's really all I care to say about James. So we are moving on to a few years and a few seasons later to get the next person within this archetype, and someone who's at pretty much the ending point of the era compared to the other two who right in the beginning of the era, where obviously the person I'm referencing is Adam. So clearly he was a huge rocker, punker. He fit a lot of the boxes that is kind of stereotyped for punk rockers, especially when it comes to the television point of view. And I find it interesting that obviously he's a superfan and he's a punk rocker essentially. And they cast him on this season where Evil Dick ended up being on the season, so he might have been one of those people who were cast for a veteran like Dick, and that tends to happen with a lot of these mixed seasons on reality TV, where they cast a newbie hoping that they will bond with a veteran who is of a similar archetype. But with Evil Dick being cast last minute, supposedly, I don't know how accurate that is. But they did get along during Evil Dick's brief time in the house. Adam on the season didn't really exemplify a lot of the traits that is associated with people of this archetype. Him and the next person that I'm going to be talking about right afterward were kind of like a daisical. They were very calming. They really weren't into the drama much at all or the strategy. They were very passive personalities, and Adam definitely was that. It might have been due to both this season and the next season being mixed seasons with a huge veteran presence. And in cases like that, the newbies kind of just get lost in the shuffle a lot of the time. But I definitely do think that he was blinded by the vet, and he didn't have as big of a personality or as valid of a personality as some of the others before him. So, the next person that I've been hinting at and kind of discussing with Adam is Jen from Big Brother 14, and there's definitely a lot of similarities between them. Obviously, they are both heavy punk rockers, and if I recall correctly, she was in some sort of like rock band before the season. I don't know how successful they were, but they apparently have some legitimate credit in the music business. She definitely had the appearance of a punk rocker when it comes to all the leather, the spiked clothing, the dyed hair, and all that jazz. But once she actually got into the house, she's actually a very chill, laid back, social woman who didn't have anger issues. She didn't really have a temper, and she didn't really have the biggest personality. She was just very calm, cool, and collected, and due to this, it caused her to essentially coast to the end game of the season. She wasn't involved in the strategy of the game whatsoever. So she's very similar to Adam in that element, and I definitely do think that they casted the punk rockers definitely when it comes to the late era to people. I do think that the network and the producers probably saw her as disappointing because they're expecting this hugely volatile person with this very loud, obnoxious personality, but they didn't really get that, and I think that's why she was so under edited. So, the next largest person on the list, honestly, they might be the largest when it comes to their role on the show overall, is Paul from Big Brother 18 and Big Brother 19. At this point, it had been a few years since they cast someone from this archetype, and this is the first time that someone was cast in the modern era, which is Big Brother 16 to Big Brother 22. Just from my recollection, Paul knew absolutely nothing about the show, and pretty much came in having to figure out his own way of playing the game and all that stuff. But he never really changed his personality. He was always very loud, very obnoxious, honestly, kind of vile at times. But he had a lot of Paul had a lot of charm, where a lot of people kind of just became closer to him. Heck, you even saw someone like Polly really latch onto him and might have had a crush on him to the point where Polly started dressing like Paul. Polly cut his hair like Paul, and they're PP. But people didn't really find Paul that intimidating at first, despite all the confrontations that Paul got into, despite all the wild stuff Paul got into, or Paul said. And I definitely do think that it was because Paul was seen as an underdog during his first season, so a lot of people kind of just let it go. But Paul came back the very next season, being the only veteran in that house, kind of like Jesse from Big Brother 10 and Big Brother 11. But Paul was a lot more popular than Jesse was on his original season, so there's a difference there. And then essentially, Paul kind of created a cult around themselves. And pretty much the entire house wanted to work with Paul. Paul would use all these vile tactics to kick down people who are on the out, and it really made them feel poorly about themselves on their way out the door, and had his cult or their cult doing whatever Paul wanted, no matter how stupid, no matter how poor it was in the other self interest, and it really made for an unpleasant watch throughout the season. All of this came up to the point where Paul didn't end up winning the season because Paul just didn't own up to anything. And this was kind of the same thing that happened last season as well. Obviously, Paul really got a beatdown from the public where it caused Paul to kind of go under the radar for several years. And it isn't until literally recently where Paul felt comfortable doing reality TV again, filming House of Villains Season 3 as I am currently recording this. Next person on this list is Megan from Big Brother 19. It's clear just from her appearance and what they had her describe herself as during interviews and the brief intro on the show. She was supposed to fit this alternative girl archetype, and ultimately we didn't get a chance to see that because she quit the show before it really began. She was on the outs due to obviously just the dynamics of the house not fitting someone of her archetype, and then the whole scandal with the Alex Jessica race situation just made her pretty much flatline. But even had that not happened, I do think she most likely would have been an early boot, if not the first boot, just due to her not gelling in or fitting in well at all, despite her being a fan of the show at the time, or the game. And the final person of this group, and the only person in the diversity era so far, is Tucker from Big. Sorry, not Tucker. Turner from Big Brother 24. I don't know why I confused the names. Clearly, just from his appearance with the colored hair and some of the clothing, he was clearly supposed to be the alternative guy. I don't think he fits the goth but at all, or the punk one either, but he's clearly supposed to be very different and very odd. And he definitely had some of the similar interests despite not perfectly fitting into the archetype. Just from what I remember, he would state very weird stuff all the time that kind of had him on the out socially in the beginning. He definitely had a follower mindset where he needed someone to lead him through the game. We saw this with Pooch at first, and then Kyle, and then Monty in the end game. He did these moves, but they were never seen as his because he wasn't much of a leader. And I do think a part of it is just he was just seen as very odd, but he's also just very passive as well. He wasn't confrontational. He was kind of muted compared to the others. So I think that's kind of why he stands out here, even in this archetype tier. And it's kind of hard to place him anywhere, but if I had to place him somewhere, this is the closest place, pretty much. Alright, so that's it for this video. I knew it'd be a short and sweet one because this archetype is very short and there's less than people in it. Just from my list here that I have on my desktop, I see I have 10 more videos to do. Some of those are the male version and the female version of the same archetype, so that will be something I have to get to. But in general, less than 10 archetypes, but some of the archetypes will be duplicated based on them being a man or a woman. And yeah, I'm going to do this. It's probably going to run all the way through Big Brother 27 airing in the fall. So we're making progress at least. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with more soon. Take care.